What if I told you that the title Duchess of Sussex, a name printed on royal stationery, echoed in press releases, and stitched into the global imagination, was never quite what it seemed? What if behind the ceremonial smiles and glittering gowns, there was a quiet, relentless unraveling, one that neither palace aides nor PR teams could fully contain? And what if, in the span of a single vote, a motion passed not by the monarch, but by Parliament itself, the illusion crumbled? No fanfare, no curtain call, just the abrupt, clinical end of a royal title. Revoked, nullified, gone. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Now ask yourself, why now? Because this didn't happen in 2020, at the height of the Sussex media storm. It didn't happen in 2021 after the Oprah interview. It didn't even happen in 2022 when criticism of the couple intensified across the Commonwealth. It happened now. And that timing, well, that's where the Real story begins. This isn't just about a title being stripped. It's not about a feud. It's not even really about Meghan Markle, at least not in the way the headlines want you to believe. It's about something older, heavier, the slow reassertion of British constitutional power, the delicate balance between image and authority, and the quiet panic that spreads through institutions when branding outpaces control. Because this isn't a Hollywood story. It's a sovereignty story, and somewhere, buried in the timeline, is a moment, just one, where the entire monarchy realized they couldn't unring the bell. They couldn't silence the narrative, but they could silence the title. So the question is, what did they see that made them move now? It didn't leak to the press. It wasn't whispered in memoirs. It was sealed, folded, delivered directly to the speaker's desk in a brown envelope with no return address. Now that might sound dramatic. But as one MP said off the record, we didn't vote to punish her. We voted to protect the crown. But protect it from what? A woman? Or the narrative she still had the power to control? Let's pause for a second. In the noise of royal scandal, it's easy to lose the thread, to get swept up in the petty, the surface drama. Who said what? Who wore what? Who ignored whom? That's always the bait. But when Parliament moves, when lawmakers intervene in a royal designation, it's not noise. It's architecture. And this motion? It wasn't symbolic. It was surgical. So if you're wondering what really happened, if you're wondering why, after 4 years of apparent peace, silence, even, the UK Parliament acted swiftly and without royal objection, then you're asking the right question. Because behind the headlines and beyond the press statements, something broke. Or maybe it was already broken, and this vote was just Parliament acknowledging the obvious. But here's the rub. This vote didn't come from Buckingham Palace. It came from Westminster. That distinction matters. It matters because it signals something very few people have been willing to say out loud. The palace didn't just allow this to happen. It might have needed it to. The title was revoked by law, not royal decree. And when power shifts from throne to chamber, it means something larger is under threat. Let's pull back even further. In 2018, Meghan Markle became the Duchess of Sussex, an American actress stepping into the heart of a British institution. The cameras rolled. The tabloids salivated. The crowds cheered. History was made. And for a brief moment, it looked like the monarchy had reinvented itself. A modern couple, a biracial duchess, a progressive fairy tale. But the honeymoon didn't last. Because history doesn't forget. Institutions don't evolve in press releases. And titles, well, titles come with rules. Ancient ones. Unforgiving ones. Some say Meghan never truly understood the weight of the title she carried. Others argue the institution never truly gave her a fair chance. Both can be true. That's the thing with modern scandals. Contradictions live side by side. But no matter how you spin it, the title Duchess of Sussex wasn't just ceremonial. It was strategic. And when strategy fails, the cleanup begins. So let's talk about what we know. The motion was filed quietly. The debate in the Commons was swift, focused. The vote passed by a comfortable margin. No royal statement. No formal resistance. And the title, once etched in the royal directory, is now gone. Legally, surgically, irrevocably. But here's what we don't know. Why did several key MPs receive classified intelligence briefings weeks before the vote? Why was a sealed envelope, containing unverified but highly sensitive reputational material, placed into the parliamentary record but never opened publicly. And why? In the days following the vote, did one senior official from the palace abruptly resign, citing irreconcilable conflicts between public duty and internal decisions? There are breadcrumbs, but the full picture? It's still murky. Some say it's about foreign influence. Others whisper about hidden recordings, private transactions, and failed legal threats that never made it to court, but made it to Parliament. But whatever it wasn't noise. Because Westminster doesn't act on gossip. Not in matters of sovereignty. There had to be more. And here's where it gets even stranger. Sources close to the palace say King Charles was informed of the vote 24 hours in advance. He didn't object. He didn't advise. He didn't respond. Just one line, reportedly, to a senior aide. If that's what they've chosen, we respect their will. Respect. Not approve. Not endorse. Not mourn. Just accept. Now I want you to hold on to that word. Accept. Because what if this was never about punishment? What if Parliament didn't revoke the title out of spite, but out of necessity? What if this was a quiet agreement between power centers, that titles linked to the crown must serve the nation, not the brand? That when branding overtakes service, the architecture collapses? And perhaps, in their view, it already had. Some of you are wondering, is this even legal? Can Parliament override royal title designations? Well, technically yes. It's rare. It's uncomfortable. But constitutional scholars will tell you, in extreme cases, Parliament can act when the monarch refuses, hesitates, or remains silent. And silence was the theme here. For months, years even, until suddenly, it wasn't. So where does this leave us? That's where things get interesting. Because this vote, it didn't just end something. It began something. A new precedent. A new boundary. A new message. Not just to Meghan Markle, but to anyone who might mistake symbolic power for sovereign immunity. And as one MP warned, off the record, of course, this was the only surgical option left. Because if we didn't act now, we might not be able to later. Act against what exactly? That's what we're going to find out. Because over the next few chapters, we're going to follow the trail backward. Through the sealed envelopes, the last-minute calls, the quiet palace strategy, the legal firestorm waiting to erupt, and the allies already distancing themselves behind the scenes. This story isn't over. It's just reached the point where silence is no longer possible. But what happens next? Well, that part, no one saw coming. And it starts with a single envelope, placed on the speaker's desk, by someone we never expected. So, who delivered the envelope? It wasn't a palace aide. It wasn't a whistleblower in a trench coat. And it wasn't some rogue MP trying to make a name for himself. It was a former diplomat, anonymous by name, recognizable by gait. Security footage shows him entering Westminster with a single document case. No entourage, no eye contact, no words. He left 13 minutes later. That envelope, the one placed directly on the speaker's desk, would alter the course of modern royal precedent. But let's be clear, the envelope wasn't the beginning. It was the end of a long, quiet war. And the vote? That was the moment the curtains were pulled back. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you saw Parliament insert itself into a matter of royal title? It doesn't happen. Not in a modern context. Not unless something's gone very, very wrong behind the scenes. And yet, just 2 days after that envelope landed, the motion was filed. Short, sterile, emotionless. It read more like a footnote in a constitutional manual than the spark that would reignite a global firestorm. Motion to revoke the styling and privileges associated with the Duchess of Sussex designation, under advisory council and in accordance with the public dignity standard. That's it. No emotion. No outrage. Just procedure. Which, in some ways, made it more unnerving. Because when government strips a title not in protest, but in calm consensus, that's not drama. That's infrastructure. And infrastructure doesn't move unless the foundations are shaking. Let's walk through the day of the vote. The chamber wasn't packed. This wasn't Prime Minister's questions or a post-budget debate. It was low-key, by design. And yet, 143 MPs showed up in person. Another 89 tuned in via secure link. The motion was introduced at 3:11 p.m. By 3:24, it had passed first reading. By 3:58, it cleared the floor. No delays. No backroom amendments. No ceremonial speeches. The speed of it shocked even some sitting members. One junior MP, whose name we've redacted for safety reasons, told us off camera. We were told to come prepared. We weren't told why, only that this would be the cleanest way to cut the cord. Cut the cord. That language matters. It wasn't framed as discipline. It was damage control. But whose damage? That's the part no one in Westminster will say out loud. Because officially, the motion wasn't tied to any particular event. There were no charges, no findings, no scandal headline that triggered this in the traditional sense. And that's precisely why this vote matters. Because if the title had been revoked because of some overt misstep, a breach of law, a leaked recording, a damning interview, it would follow precedent. But this didn't follow precedent. This made one. And that's where the monarchy's silence becomes deafening. No royal objection. No Clarence House statement. Not even a vague, "This is a matter for the government." Just stillness, which says more than any press release ever could. Because silence at this level, in matters this symbolic, isn't passive. It's coordinated. And that means one of two things. Either the palace approved of the move, quietly, behind closed doors. Or worse, they were complicit. So let's pull focus for a moment. Let's talk about what it means when Parliament revokes a royal title without palace objection. It means the monarchy has either lost control of its own narrative or willingly handed it over. And that has implications far beyond Meghan Markle. Because once Parliament exercises that kind of authority over symbolic power, it doesn't just do it once. It remembers. It learns. It sets precedent. And precedent is the enemy of mystery. Precedent makes the unspeakable repeatable. So why now? Why this title? Why this person? And why this week, this session, this vote? We spoke to two parliamentary aides, both of whom agreed to comment under strict anonymity. One told us there were internal concerns that the Duchess title, if left unchallenged, would become a platform, not just of influence, but of destabilization. Destabilization? That's a strong word, but it came up more than once. In context, it seemed to mean this. The Duchess of Sussex had become a sovereign brand, one untethered from the sovereign. And brands, unlike institutions, don't answer to anyone. They do interviews. They sign deals. They go off script. The title, once symbolic of duty, had become, in the eyes of some lawmakers, a weaponized identity. And if that identity chose to act against British interests, directly or indirectly, there would be no way to stop it, not without looking petty. Or worse, colonial. So Parliament did what the monarchy couldn't. It cut the cord. Cleanly. Quietly. Legally. Still, the timing remains suspicious. Because just 72 hours before the vote, Meghan's legal team was seen entering a private arbitration meeting in Los Angeles. The topic? Unknown. But sources suggest it involved rights over previously unreleased content. Material reportedly recorded during her final year as a working royal. Content that, according to insiders, includes sensitive audio of private palace interactions. Now, we're not alleging blackmail. That's a serious claim, and we're not there. But we are saying this. When unreleased content with potential reputational damage is being negotiated behind closed doors, and at the same time, Parliament is preparing to erase the title that legitimizes the narrator of that content, it's hard not to see connection, even if no one dares name it. And here's where things twist again. The motion didn't just pass. It passed with 83% support, including votes from MPs who'd previously defended Meghan publicly. One even tweeted in 2021, "Meghan's courage will be remembered long after this institution forgets its humanity." That same MP voted aye on the revocation. We reached out for comment. The office declined, but one aide said flatly, "The game changed. The materials changed. You'd have voted the same if you'd seen what we saw." Seen what? That's the open wound. Because nobody's talking. And yet, nobody's denying either. The vote was framed as a protective measure for constitutional integrity. But integrity from what? A duchess without a security detail? A Netflix producer with a few podcasts under her belt? That's the contradiction that's driving people mad. If she was irrelevant, why act? If she was dangerous, why not say it? That dissonance, that refusal to explain, creates only one outcome. Suspicion. Suspicion that something bigger lies beneath the surface. Something no one in power is quite ready to face head-on. Not yet. But that clock is ticking. Because if Parliament was forced to move, there's a pressure point we haven't touched yet. A final detail that made the vote inevitable. And we found it. Or at least, a piece of it. One line. Buried in a redacted advisory brief submitted during the motion's early review. It reads, Revocation advised under Clause 27B, in response to recorded attempts at conditional influence utilizing symbolic status. Conditional influence. That's a term used in only one context. Soft diplomacy leverage. Usually associated with foreign lobbying, which raises the stakes significantly. Because if Meghan, knowingly or not, was positioned to exert soft pressure on international interests using her royal styling, then we're no longer talking about scandal. We're talking about statecraft. And in that world, titles aren't revoked out of revenge. They're revoked out of necessity. But this just scratches the surface. Because what happens after the vote is even stranger. Not in Westminster, but in Montecito.